Hello world, this is Lisa Friedrichsen, your friend and computer science professor at Johnson County Community College. And in this short screencast, we're going to continue looking at Web 110, HTML and CSS, and the objectives, and what you'd have to prove in order to pass through these objectives. So let's search for the class. I'm going to go the most direct way, which is to type in the course prefix and number. And here we have Web 110, HTML and CSS. Here's the course description. When I click the outline, I get the description and more, textbooks, supplies, objectives, outline, and competencies. And we're working on objective 3 in this screencast. Organize website files and FTP them to a web server. And specifically, the breakout of that is just 2 items. Define web file naming conventions and file management, and use FTP to deploy pages to a web server. Let's look at a web page in Notepad++. In this case, my file is named test.html. It's in a folder 110-3 on the desktop. And it's referring to 2 external files. Styles.css, that's my style sheet. And I have one image, jccc.jpg. And given that there's no path before these file names, that means all the files live in the same folder. Let's just make sure they can find each other by launching in Chrome. And yes, I can see I have a style sheet with the colors, and I can also see that I've got a JCCC logo. If I look at those files in the folder themselves, here's my desktop, here's my 110-3 folder, and all the files are together. Also notice that all the files are named in all lowercase with no spaces, long as needed to be descriptive, yet as short as possible. So you'll want to implement all those best practices in your file and folder naming conventions as well. So we only need 3 little files to make this web page at this point. But as any web developer knows, the number of files that you'll be creating and that need to interact with each other grow significantly very quickly. So it's a very common practice to organize your images in an images folder and I'll move that jccc.jpg file there, and to organize your styles in a styles or a CSS folder. So I'll move that styles.css file there. Now, unfortunately, in my code, when I do not have a path to the file, the code is saying to me that this file lives in the same folder as the test.html document. And since I just moved styles and jccc.jpg to their own individual folders, I've now broken the link from the test.html file to the style sheet as well as to the logo. So I want you to know how to fix your code so that the files can find each other again. And for the styles file, I simply put it into a CSS folder. So I have to specify that path. For the image, I put it in an images folder. And so when I save that and now run my code again, all the files have found each other. But sometimes you'll have a folder for the HTML file as well. So I'm going to put test.html in the pages folder. Now again, if I'm in the pages folder inside the 110-3 folder, I cannot see the CSS folder, nor can I see the images folder. I have to back up one level before I can go into the CSS folder or before I can go to the images folder. So these file paths are always relative to wherever my web page is. If I have to back up before I can go into CSS. So how do we code this organization of files in our Notepad++? Well, first I have to reopen the web page because I moved it. Okay, so right now this path is saying wherever I'm at in pages, go into the CSS folder, find styles. Wherever I'm at, go into the images folder and find the JPEG. And just to prove that this is broken, I'm going to run it real quickly for you here again. It is broken. So to say back out of the pages folder, go back to the 110-3 folder, you do .. That means back out of the folder I'm in, and you can go forward. And I need to do that on my images as well. And so if I gave you some files, 3 files that were disorganized and couldn't find one another, I'd want you to be able to do this, to put them back together. I'd also want you to be able to tell me why we don't like spaces or uppercase letters in web files. We have a couple different options at JCCC, and I don't care whether you use the traditional web server, the Publish with FileZilla, or whether you use the new cPanel server, which has a few more capabilities. As long as you're capable of connecting to the JCCC web server and you know how to find your files. Here I'm on my desktop. Here's my 110-3 folder with the pages, CSS, and images subfolders, and publish to your public_HTML folder, which creates the URL for me. I'm going to be happy with that. That's what I'm looking for. Do you know how to move your files from your development machine to the JCCC web server? Once that's done, I'd expect you to be able to pull that file up into a browser. And if you're at JCCC, you know that the URL that's created for you by default, the public_HTML folder, is studentsplural.jccc.edu/your username. And then in my case, I would have 110-3/pages/test.html to find that page. And there we go. We've created the page. We've organized the files in different folders. We've corrected the paths between those files in the code. We've published our pages, and we've proven that they're published successfully by pulling them up in a browser. Thank you.